All right. Good morning, Jules. How are you? Thank you for taking part in the Irish Goodbye podcast. How's it going?
Good, Brian. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. So the premise of the Irish Goodbye podcast is that we are interviewing real people with real successes, that real careers, not necessarily people in the C-suite or chief executives, people that have had, as we say, real real jobs that most of us can kind of relate to. And we're interested in, how what was your journey like, how you got to where you are, and what were some of the trials and tribulations that you had to work through on the way, and then what would you pass on to the next generation or the next bunch of people that are coming through that are following in your footsteps. So if I may, Jules, I'll just ask you to perhaps give a bit of an introduction about yourself and your background and a short summary of your career, and then we'll go from there. And thank you again.
All right, so I'm a 44-year-old retired major crimes detective. I've worked cases from cold-blooded homicides to intricate fraud cases. My law enforcement career spanned about 13 years, and the majority of that was in all types of investigations, not just criminal, but also internal affairs. I did a lot of pre-employment background investigations on potential candidates for police officers, as well as many other non-sworn positions. And now I'm just retired and living that retired life.
Well, good for you. We're sure we're all somewhat envious. Cheers to you, yeah. So if I may, Jules, how did you get started in the police force? What made you want to become a police person?
Well, I think it was kind of like a calling, no different than maybe being a priest or a doctor. Truthfully, when I was younger, my mother had this friend, and she was a policewoman, and she used to come over, and I used to sit in the car and play with the lights and the sirens, and I thought that was just the coolest thing. But unfortunately, I never really saw growing up a lot of women in this job, and I certainly didn't see a lot of women like me, small, petite, very feminine. So I wasn't sure where I would fit into that field. And it wasn't until, believe it or not, I got mugged my freshman year in college. I was at the University of Rhode Island, and, you're naive and stupid. And we used to drive down to Providence because it was 18 to party, 21 to drink. And we used to go to these clubs, and it was freezing. So rather than all of us suffering, we would pick out of a hat who would go back at the end of the night and get all the coats and everything out of the car and bring it to the club, because we were too cheap. We didn't have any money to do all the coats. So it was my turn, and I went back to the vehicle, which was about, I would say, a 1 city block from where the club was located. And all I remember was putting the key, because we didn't have fobs back then.
Yep.
Putting the key in the lock and waking up, I don't know how, maybe a few minutes later, bleeding from the head, and realizing what just happened. And when the cops arrived, they were kind of dismissive of the incident, and they didn't really seem to take it seriously. And I just remember thinking to myself, I could do a better job at this. I can probably solve this at 18 years old, but I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I think I want to pursue this. I just didn't know how.
Right.
So I did the college route. My parents really wanted me to go into the teaching field, so I did that for a few years. But my soul fell asleep. I was teaching kids 4th grade, and I don't know if people really understand. It's not like in high school where the bell rings and you get a whole new set of kids and you have breaks in between. That door closes at that morning bell, and you are in that classroom till lunch. And then at lunch, you're supervising them, and then you're walking them. So there wasn't really this transition period. And I just felt like the walls were closing in on me. You know, I couldn't hear one more time, "Can you tie my shoe?" So I did, I did take a huge leap of faith. I believed in me, but I don't think a lot of other people believed in me, certainly not my parents. And I really decided to fully embark on this journey of getting into law enforcement. So, and I was late getting into the field. I was 28 by the time I went to the police academy. And that was a very harrowing experience. I mean, I had to cut off most of my hair. There was only one other female in the class. I think we had about 55 to start with, and I think we graduated around 33. It was 5 months of hell, if I'm going to be completely honest. The physical training, just the mental toughness, fighting through a lot of adversity, especially being a woman. And finally, here I graduate, and I'm like, yes, this is the best day of my life, but I don't have a job because I was not hired before, right? I put myself through the academy because they take a small percentage of people who are willing to pay their own way through the academy in the hopes of getting hired after graduation. It's almost like you're a free agent, right? And the appeal is you are more cost effective to other departments. They don't have to pay your way. They don't have to pay you during the academy. They don't have to buy your equipment. You front that bill. So when I graduated, I wasn't aware of the rejection that I was going to face. You know, I thought I was going to get a job within the first couple of weeks and I'd be on my merry way, but it didn't happen that way. And I think I went on about roughly 47 interviews before I actually got hired. Now, and I want to go ahead.
Yeah. So you said there's a couple of things that you've said there that I want to perhaps double back on, because I think that's really important. And you talked about the environment that you're in, but you said something, you know, before that, where you said you wanted to, you made that transition from teaching into law enforcement. And I think a lot of people, when they look back on their careers, myself included, sometimes people take a linear projection and they work maybe in one place and they work there for 20 years. But there's also a lot of people that have done different things and tried different things. They've figured out, well, that's not for me, or I don't like that. And they've redirected themselves. But you said two things that I think were really important. You said you didn't know how to do it. So I guess my first question is, you know, how did you figure out how did you make that transition? Like what did you kind of have to do to get into the academy? And then you said something else that I think I really want to make sure that we drill into that, because I think this is really important. I think especially for, you know, younger people that are coming through and maybe they're not sure how to do something. You said, I believed in me. And I think that's a really, really important thing for people to understand, because it's the mindset that you carried through during, and continue to do so. But that mindset really, really matters. You believed that you could do it. And you also said something else. We said you had 47 interviews, in order to get a job. So how would you say that belief has carried you through that? And then, how did you make that transition, say, from teacher to the academy? Like what did you kind of do to make that change?
So I think what I did is, me personally, I not only used resources around me. I had friends that were dating police officers. I would almost like interview them when we would go out to dinner. Like, well, how did you get started? What are the ways to do this? What are the options? What's the easiest way to go about this? The second thing was, once I kind of formulated a path, it was pretty basic. It's either you take a test in specific towns, but you have to live in that town and you have to score really high on the test. And I'm not a test taker, so I kind of knew that wasn't going to work. And then there's like different departments that offer their own tests, not like a statewide or a countywide test. And it's just as difficult. And a lot of times those departments tend to hire people that they know, people that they want to get in. And then the third option I learned was to apply to and get accepted to a certified police academy. And there's one in every county in New Jersey. So that's what I started doing. I went on the internet. I started looking at the process, the timelines, and it was very grueling. I mean, I had to pass multiple physicals, multiple psychological exams. And I was fortunate enough to have a very clean background. So I was accepted on my first try, but it was not in the county that I lived in. So I had to make a huge sacrifice. I had to rent a place. I went on Craigslist. I found this big old house right around the corner from the police academy. And then I knew I couldn't afford it. So then I really propelled myself by getting on the internet, getting roommates to come in to subsidize the rent so that I could do this, because you're not getting paid for 5 months. You know what I mean? So yeah, and then just going through this whole paramilitary process, coming from a teaching, it was like, I'll never forget on the first day, they were like, you have to sound off. And what do you see on the movies, right? Like sound off, 1, 2. Like I didn't realize like sounding off was like you had to say your name and like, sir, yes, sir, like recruit. So, you know, I was like, they were like, sound off. And I was like, 1, 2, you know, so you can imagine the harrowing. I just set the pace that day to just really, really be targeted. But I never gave up. I knew that I could do it. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. It was almost like doing a stint in the penitentiary. I knew it was going to be hard. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be over quickly. Yeah. But once you got out, so to speak, I knew that I could really aim at fulfilling this dream of mine to really be in law enforcement. I never gave up. And that mentality, I just didn't have another one. I had invested so much at that point that what was I going to do? Just throw in the towel and couple interviews and people that didn't like me. I knew that there was a lid for every pot. So I would eventually fit in somewhere. And I knew that people would recognize, a good department would recognize my talents. And I wanted to be Olivia Benson from SVU. I didn't want to be a college cop, but they were the first people that gave me the opportunity. So I became a college cop. I mean, we carried guns and all that stuff, but it was a different type of policing than what I wanted to be in. So I looked at that as a stepping stone. I knew I wasn't going to be there indefinitely. I knew that it was a way to get good training, get my foot in the door, do a good job, and have a great reference moving forward.
But that's, I think that's a really, you know, there's a few things that you've unpacked there, which just perhaps to summarize is, you never gave up, you never stopped trying, an opportunity, and I think this is something that, I do quite a bit of mentoring with people, and I always say, you got to take when an opportunity presents itself, it might not be exactly the thing that you thought it might be or what you wanted, but it gets you one step closer to your ultimate objective or your ultimate goal. So you have to take those opportunities when they present themselves. So that mindset is really, really important, and I think that it's hard to sometimes articulate that to people, that you need to believe in yourself and you just need to keep going, and when things get tough, you just keep going. You keep having those issues, you keep knocking on doors. It's in my career, I had a sales job, and I was selling electrical and engineering components to places like airports and manufacturers and things like that.
Sounds exciting.
It was pretty interesting going to see how products are made. That was quite interesting. But I wanted to get into technology sales, which was a different field, and there's some parallels here, because no one would take a chance on me. They said, you haven't got the experience, you can't do the job, you haven't got the experience. And I knew that I could do the job if I could find someone that would take a chance on me, so to speak. And I was lucky. I went for many interviews, and eventually I found someone, an old boss of mine, Mornay Hector, who's a great guy, and he was willing to kind of take a chance on me, even though I didn't have that necessary exact experience that they were looking for. So, has there been an example, as you went through those, through that sort of interview process? It sounds like, was there someone that you were either a mentor or someone that kind of helped you on that journey as you went through it?
I gotta be honest, not really. I mean,
Right.
For example, back in high school, we all have quotes under our pictures, and mine was, if opportunity doesn't knock, build the door. So I think it's just kind of been instilled in me, and I'm just the type of person that if you tell me I can't do it, I want to do it even more. So I think it like really comes from, I don't know, there's like something in your upbringing, and I'm one of many siblings, but maybe it's being the oldest. I don't know, but I've always had that no quit mentality. And you telling me I can't do something, or you not giving me the opportunity, makes me want to just do it harder and do it better and do it faster. So I didn't really have a mentor. And I'm not going to candy coat it and be like, oh yeah, I just looked rejection in the face and kept going. There was some really dark nights where I was like, maybe I should just redo my resume and go back to teaching. And, I did have some doubts that creeped in, but I just didn't let them stay there. I think it's normal for that to happen, but you just got to push them out, and a lot of self-talk, like, no, this is what you chose. You're going to see it through. And then after that, you can make a decision. Somebody is going to give you a chance. It's just being that right person to do it. And fortunately, working for a college, they're looking for a different type of police officer. They're looking for a softer officer. They're looking for somebody who's more approachable, to deal with the kids. And with my teaching background, that really helped me get that job.
So that's a really interesting point as well, because I think, as many people have these different experiences on their career journeys, as long as you take something from it and you apply yourself and you work hard in all of those situations, nothing is for naught. That what you did there ultimately helped you on your goal and your trajectory to get to where you wanted to go. So I think the message there for perhaps people that are coming through is, don't discount anything that you've been doing. It's all those experiences add to the end goal and what you ultimately want to achieve. So with that in mind, and your experience that you shared there, if there was someone perhaps who's wants to be in a is in the same position, wants to move from, say, a teacher to a police person, or is looking to change their career and wants to make a move, what's something that you would tell to them or say to them for someone that's trying to follow in your footsteps or trying to follow in that in that kind of progression?
Well, number one, I would say, don't expect to start at the top immediately, right? You got to work your way up. Like, you're not going to go in with like your yoga pants and your man bun and become CEO tomorrow. Like I had to start at the bottom. And I think for me, it was just this, I knew that this is what I really wanted to do, that commitment. I wasn't looking for a job. I was looking for a career. And I think a lot of times people like hop from job to job and like, oh, this one looks a little bit more shinier. And for me, I think law enforcement is really a lifestyle and a career. And I think once you make that commitment to it, you will have to see it through, right? Because to me, happiness, we all have to work. We have to spend most of us spend more time with our coworkers than we do with our families. So it's really true that when they say, if you love what you do, you won't work a day in your life.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
It was like the dangling carrot in front of my face that kept me moving forward, because I was like, yeah, I want to love what I do. I want to feel like I go to work every day and it's not a job. And I would instill that in something and in people who want to come into this career. And I'm going to go back to what I said. It's going to be a long, hard battle that's not going to be over quickly. You're going to face a lot of rejection. You're going to deal with a lot of the ugliness of the world. Number one, you better have the mental capacity to deal with that. And number two, you can't look at your life as, oh, I'm just going to get this job. You got to look at it as, this is going to be my career, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to really fulfill that and be committed to that. So I would tell them, you got to be committed. Yeah. And you got to be able to face rejection.
And that stands for, I think, any career. And you said something in there that's right. I'm thinking about this before we met this morning, because, you know, I think irrespective of what career you're in, and as you sort of gain seniority in your career, everyone experiences stress in their career. And you know, obviously in different industries, stress represents and manifests itself in different ways. In my role in my career in technology sales, you know, we have stress if we miss quotas, or if we have, you know, perhaps poor management or leadership, or customers renege on perhaps a promise that they've made. But at the end of the day, the chance of anyone actually dying is very, very minimal. Maybe not impossible, but very, very minimal. And so one of the things that I wanted to ask you, you know, obviously you mentioned, you know, the number of cases and situations that you've been involved with. You know, in those kind of situations, stress, you know, you have a lot of stress in those roles. And my question is, you know, how do you manage that? How do you manage stress in those situations? And what kind of, you know, what advice would you pass on to people about how to manage stressful situations?
Okay, well, going back to what you're saying, to build on that a little bit, yes, you're right. You're instilled with this power to take away people's civil liberties. You know, you have a gun. People forget about car. You have a police car. That's no different than a weapon. I think it comes down to customer service, though. I mean, it's on different levels, but that's what I was providing. Really, customer service in a way to the population that I was serving. So I think there are a lot of similarities. Yes, there are some differences, which definitely can up the ante when you strap a gun on and you put a vest on and, you know, you go out that night and you won't be home for 12 hours or whatever. And yeah, there is that risk. But you can also get hit by a bus when you go out to, you know, get on a bus to go to New York City, or, you know, I mean, I don't look at it like that. I looked at it as, you're going to compartmentalize things, and you have to be good at that, because you can't take things home with you. Even in tech field sales, I'm sure that's high pressure. You just have to be able to compartmentalize and leave that at the door when you come home. And is it easy? No, but I think when you do it enough, it just becomes second nature. At least for me, that's what happened. What I did to deal with stressful situations is just tell myself, like, everything's temporary, right? You know, everything's going to come full circle. The bad times are going to end. And so will the good times, you know, kind of like with the stock market, right? It always corrects itself. So a lot of stressful times, I would just take a deep breath, focus on the job at hand and put my personal feelings aside.
So
And
I
really
think this,
successful.
sorry. Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that, because especially you might have in the, say, the technology environment that we work in, you might have a meeting with a customer, or an internal meeting that's enormously stressful, or you might have perhaps an internal meeting that hasn't gone your way, whatever it might be. But you do have to compartmentalize things, because then if you go straight from there onto a meeting with your team and you're leading a team, and you carry that emotion, sort of forward, then you manifest that emotion across other people as well. And so one of the things that I've learned in my career is that there's two kinds of contagion. There's negative contagion, which is really, really easy to get into, people gossiping or complaining, or nothing's good enough, or nothing works, or the product's no good. And that can spread in a really insidious manner. But also positivity can as well, which is hard to do sometimes when you're going from stressful situation to stressful situation. So I think it's very interesting that you talk about that compartmentalization and not carrying it with you. I think it's more difficult than perhaps you might be making out, but it's
No,
certainly
absolutely. And I was told early on that, and it goes, this is not personal. It's a job, right?
Yeah.
You're meeting people on the worst day of their life. If you met them in a better setting, like, you can't take it to heart. You got to look at it as a job. And also you got to remember, even in your own, with your coworkers and your supervisors, like, not everybody's going to like you, and you're not going to like everybody, and that's okay. But you have a common goal, and that common goal is to get the job done. You can go home and cry about it later. You can go home and run 17 miles if that makes you feel better, or some sort of outlet. I think it's important that you have some sort of outlet. But me going in with the mindset that it wasn't personal, and that you don't mix business and friendship, so to speak, really helped me be able to compartmentalize things and look at things as what they were at that time, and not what they would have been or what they could have been. What is it now? What do I have to do to achieve this goal? May it be de-escalating the situation between a husband and a wife, may it be solving this homicide, whatever it is. But I think coming in and being told that and really internalizing that helped me manage that stress along the way.
No, that's great insight. So, thinking about you obviously continuing that theme on your career, what's perhaps one moment in your career that maybe felt like a disaster or felt like a failure, but has perhaps turned out to be a gift or an unexpected learning or a positive moment that you weren't expecting?
So for me, I went to a call, and it was a house fire, and I learned that there was a dog inside. And I made the decision to enter that burning home in an attempt to rescue the dog. And doing so, I caused irreparable damage to my respiratory and breathing system that ultimately caused me to have to retire, take a medical retirement at such an early age. And it was traumatic. It was the most traumatic experience in my life, because I felt like Superwoman, and now I was just a woman. And I think for me, that was really hard, because not everybody likes their job, right? But when you're told you can't go back to your job, you really, really realize that you love that job. So for me, it wasn't only losing like my identity, it was losing structure, it was losing this feeling of being able to help people. And I was really lost for a time. But ultimately, what I realized was it gave me this opportunity that I wouldn't have had if I was still working, to focus on finding justice for a certain individual that was that this cold case that I had, and I really started advocating for her, which led to me being featured on a Netflix documentary, Unsolved Mysteries, produced about my case. And, you know, looking back, I would have never been able to participate in that, and showcasing this on Netflix with their 280 million subscribers really brought a lot of attention and funding to this case. That was really, you know, dead in the water for a long time, no pun intended. But I really feel that sometimes tragedy can lead to a whole different type of, like they always say, God bless the broken road, right? That led me straight, right? The Rascal Flatts song. But for me, it was true. You know, at the time, it seemed like the end of the world. But I realized it allowed me so much more time to focus on that. It allowed me so much more time to spend with my family, because, you know, you're working holidays, nights, and weekends. You're never home. You're never, and when you are, it's hard to be real present when you're home, because you're running here, running there. So I think for me, it was a blessing. It also gave me an opportunity to look to see what I want to do next. I'm not there yet, you know. But he told me, like, hey, it's okay. Life is not a race, right?
Well, and you mentioned something though. You talked about sort of feeling like you'd lost your identity, or maybe, you know, kind of lost your way a little bit. But it obviously also presented this new opportunity. But I'm interested, because you said something at the start. You said, I believed in me, and then, you know, obviously this kind of happened. So this event happened as a result of, you know, something heroic that you did. How did your mindset carry you through that moment? You know, when you were sort of perhaps feeling a bit down in the dumps, if you know what I mean. Like, how did you get yourself through that? Because I think everyone, you know, a lot of people, you know, and you said it earlier, like there's lots of ups and downs in your career, and obviously in people's personal lives as well. But, you know, from my point of view, I've always sort of thought to myself, when things have gone pear-shaped or poorly, there's always someone that's got it worse than you. So just to your point earlier, you said, you know, you just you take a little moment, you dust yourself down, you're like, get on with the job, keep moving forward. So I'm just curious how you got yourself through that sort of difficult time.
Well, I didn't for a while. I really struggled. And without sharing too much, I was in a pub very early in the day. And
nothing wrong with that, by the way.
A retired officer had come in, and I guess he saw me, and he saw me struggling and the poor shape I was in. And he came over to me. He didn't have to do that. He came over to me and he said, now, and I'm not religious, real religious disclaimer, but he took my hands in his and he said, God isn't going to put something good in your hands and not put something better in them when he takes it away. And for me, but he also followed it up with, but you have to meet him halfway. You have to pick yourself up by your bootstraps, because this isn't you. And it was that moment that really clicked with me, when I was like, yeah, this isn't me. Like, this isn't me. This isn't who you've been. And truthfully, from that day on, those kind words and somebody else believing in me when I was really not believing in myself and lost, really snapped me out of it. And fortunately, you know, he was there, he said what he said, and it really changed my life for the better. So I think it's like somebody really, sometimes when you're having a hard time, pushing you and telling you, I believe in you. I believe in you. Believe in yourself. It's like that rally cry, right?
That's right. Yeah. Well, very good. And then, so how did you then find yourself, and you obviously you talked about the Netflix documentary that you were on, but how did you sort of take yourself, into that sort of position there and find out about that case, and what was that specific role, and what was your motivation for that? And there's an interesting parallel there that perhaps on the same vein, you're looking out for someone else that that maybe wasn't being looked out for or whatever. But I'm curious how you made that transition.
Well, prior to my retirement, I was given this case to investigate, and again, this was a decades old murder, sexual assault that occurred at a college. And I had written multiple podcasts, because that's when podcasts were becoming very popular back in 18, 19. And I had written a few podcasts and a few TV shows, really trying to just get the attention to this case. And call it luck, call it fate. Out of the blue, I get a call from Caitlin Cutt, who is a producer with Unsolved Mysteries. And she said, hey, we want to learn more about this case, and, we might want to feature you in the show. And, but at the time, I could not participate because I was employed, and we have certain strict rules about talking to the press. So I was just trying to help her move in the right direction to gain some insight into the case, never thinking I was actually going to be able to participate. So with the retirement happening, she came back around and said, hey, you're retired now. Want to be in the show? We think it's going to do a lot of good. And how could you turn that down? Of course. I mean, the goal wasn't for me to get the attention. It was for us to get justice for the victim. And it was a wonderful experience. And like I said prior, a lot of great funding and attention has come from this case. And I'm really hoping, and I know it will be solved. So we're moving forward with that. But yeah, I mean, again, timing, fate, whatever you want to call it,
belief,
spends a little luck, really goes a long way. You just have to capitalize on those situations,
That's right. Take the opportunities when they present themselves. Yeah. I think that's one of the themes that we've heard, throughout the conversation. So, two more questions. So, I think one, what would you, if you were to look back and see your younger self or meet your younger self, what would you say to that person, and what do you think might surprise that person about, where you've got to?
Well, as a kid, believe it or not, I was shy. I was insecure. I certainly wasn't sure who I was at that point. I did still have that fighting spirit, but I don't think I really grew into that until I was in my 20s. But I think that younger person would say, good for you for always fighting hard for your goals. And you ran through that finish line and you kept on running. And I can't wait to see what you do next. And don't be so hard on yourself. You're just not there yet. And that's okay. You still have time on the clock.
I think, you say something. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. No, I think you said something, don't be too hard on yourself. And I think, a lot of people have that sort of perhaps an inner voice where they are, questioning themselves, and, you have a imposter syndrome. Are you good enough? Are you worthy? Are you working hard enough? And I'm perhaps a believer that a little bit of that is a good thing, because it can keep you on your toes and keep you on edge, but too much of it can be detrimental as well. So, it's a really important piece of advice and information there. And then wrapping this up, what would be if you were, we're leaving the bar and you're going to give one piece of advice or one piece of pass on some wisdom to someone following in your footsteps, what would be the one thing that you would pass on?
So I would say, number one, listen. Spend more time listening than you do talking. Sometimes silence is truly golden. And that comes from if you're working in the mailroom to the highest CEO or whatever. I truly believe that listening is a phenomenal skill that one can have. And I think number two, pick your battles. Even the best fighter in the world will get battle fatigue if they're fighting every little battle that comes up. And again, that's like coming from a supervisor down to a guy working or a girl working in the mailroom. Like, you can't complain about everything. Pick one or two things that are important and focus on them, right? You don't want to be the boss who cried wolf, or, the employee who constantly cries wolf. And I think lastly, own your mistakes. We all make them. Every single one of us is going to make a mistake. And it's okay. You don't need to give a reason or this or be an external blamer. It's everybody else's fault but mine. Just say, yeah, I messed up. And this is what I'm going to do to correct it moving forward. Have the insight to realize, hey, yeah, I'm human. I made this mistake. But boss or coworker, I realized what I did, and next time I am going to do X, Y, and Z instead. And I think that's important.
I think that's great advice. I think, and yeah, I can certainly say I've made some mistakes in my career for sure. Ownership, yeah. But ownership and accountability is, I think, really, really important. And I think I think that's a great takeaway for people as well. And I wanted to actually unpack something that you said there about listening, because you also said something earlier where you said you're meeting people on the worst day of their lives, and you're working to sort of de-escalate a situation. And so and I would imagine you are arriving on the scene, or you're arriving at a situation with limited information, and you've got different perspectives and different point of views. So, and I think for anyone that's in a leadership position, or in a position where you're trying to perhaps resolve a conflict or make an agreement or come to a negotiation, that's great advice, because you can't sort of take an action or an effective action in a situation without understanding the situation and taking input from the different parties and the different actors that are involved in that situation. So I think that's a brilliant piece of advice for anyone in any situation. And I think my wife would certainly agree with listen more than talking as well. So something I can.
And I'll just build on that a little bit, because everybody, it doesn't matter, wants to feel heard and validated and appreciated, right? So it's really a universal thing. You listen, because if we were talking right now and I was on my phone, or I was over here somewhere, are you really feeling heard? Are you really feeling important, validated? No. So I think really just like genuinely opening up your mind and saying, hey, let me just hear what they have to say. Maybe I'll learn a new perspective. Maybe I'll have a better understanding of the situation. Maybe I'll know how to address it when I have that information. Or maybe simply it just makes them feel heard, which is going to bring it down.
Yeah.
So absolutely. I think that's really important.
That's great advice. So, well, Jules, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for participating on the Irish Goodbye. This has been great, and I think it's really valuable to get perspective from someone like yourself. I think a lot of the people many of the people that we've interviewed so far have sort of backgrounds in technology and technology sales. So it's great to get your input and insight and learn more about your role in your career. So thank you very much. And
Thank
you know, we keep us posted if there's any kind of advancement in this cold case that you've been working on. So, and
Great.
what's the do you want to just maybe mention the name of the show in case anyone wants to check it out?
Yeah, so it's on Netflix. It's Unsolved Mysteries, Season 4, Episode 4, Murder Center Stage.
Jolly good. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the time, Jules. Take care.
Thank you. Have a great
Thank you.
one.
Bye.
Bye.